Welcome to The Real and the Woo. I'm your host, Lauri Stern. Join me as I invite experts and friends to discuss a range of topics, from the factual and practical to the mystical and magical. Consider this your virtual happy hour filled with lively, authentic, and meaningful conversations meant to inform, inspire, and ignite your curiosity. Whether you are very real or super woo, this podcast is just for you. Welcome to The Real and the Woo. I'm your host, Lauri Stern, and today we're going to have a party because I'm here with Evan Cudworth, the party coach. Hi, Evan.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Thanks for finding me. You found me. It's one of those things where people have stopped sending letters pretty much through the mail. So whenever I get a letter, I'm like, oh, someone's actually communicating. So when I got your email, it was that same feeling of someone found me and took the time to reach out. So I appreciate that. So before we dive in, I'd like you to tell my listeners who you are, what you do, anything you'd like to say.
Of course. Well, I'm excited to get into your life and what party means to you and everything. But yeah, briefly for anyone listening, hi everyone, my name is Evan. I go by the world's first party coach, and I'm trying to reconnect the world through party culture. I think at a time when wellness and spirituality are having this wellspring, and I think it's really beautiful and cool. And I've needed to incorporate a lot of those things in my life. I also come from the underground rave and party scene and spent a lot of time, throwing dark underground warehouse raves. And I've worked in the music industry, and I've been an addict and an alcoholic, and I've been all those things. And I've also partied sober for 2 years, and I've gotten to see all different sides of what does partying and connection mean. And I'm just out here talking about what are ways that we can redefine partying that fits into your lifestyle, so that if you're feeling disconnected from whatever that is the world, is partying and party culture a way that you can tap into those things if maybe other modalities are not working for you.
Okay, so describe in your own words then what modality is partying
Yeah. So
because you're
so
using it as a modality.
yeah. So the word party I always like to start with is interesting etymology. The word itself is a contronym, and then it means its own opposite. So party, originally like partir, means like to split, right? Or to separate, right? But then a party, a hunting party is separating, but it is a group, right? So when we think about a party, it is, yes, it is a place where we can find belonging, but by definition, it is belonging apart from something else, right? A party is not every day. You can't party every minute, every day. A party is, there's something separate. There's something different from everyday life that is sort of having this creation, a feeling of like belonging or dissolving our ego, becoming a part of a collective, but that it is ephemeral and that there is something short about it. So when I think about partying as a modality, I like to think about like Dionysian, like god Dionysus, which is kind of this god of transformation and ceremony and this dissolving of the ego into a collective.
Okay. All right. So oneness comes to
Yes.
mind, which is antithetical to the way you just described party. And then a couple things came to mind, right? So being invited to a party churns up a lot of things because we're either invited or we're not invited. And so intentionally, when you sign up for a rager, you sign up for a yoga event or something, you're joining somebody else's party. They've invited you just by presenting the event, right? So that's one kind of energy. You already know you're walking into a situation, a room, a festival of like-minded people. Unlike when you're invited to, let's say, a wedding or a bar bat mitzvah or a communion, whatever it is, you might know somebody there, but you're not going to know everybody there. And so people show up in fear or insecurity because there's a lot of people who won't show up unless they know every little detail. And of course, that's about control and other things. And so in that way, you said something at the start about you can't party every day or every day cannot be a party. I want to know why you believe that. Because to me, when you wake up any day, that's a reason to celebrate. And so I know partying isn't necessarily about celebration, but I believe most people would associate a party with a celebration. So would you like to parse that?
Yeah, a great distinction. And a way to maybe think about this is if we're talking about oneness and spirituality, we are in these bodies and we're having this experience here. If we can't be in our crown chakra all the time, we cannot be
Mhm.
constantly attached to good vibes only and all these things. We are experiencing these feelings of separateness and of these visceral physical things that we get to experience on a day-to-day basis. In my experience, when I've tried to use partying as a place to be in that good vibes only and constantly make everything a party all the time, in my experience, and many clients and people that come to me, party starts to become an escape, or it starts to become
Mm.
something that is not authentic, or they need substances, or they are just detached from the day-to-day experience because party becomes a beautiful search for oneness or from something that is not this, but that the party, I feel, should have a beginning, middle, and end.
Right. I hear. Okay. So I'm glad
Yeah.
you defined it that way because, yes, and there's no accident, right? So you and I are talking on a day, literally. I'm wearing purple. I'm in my crown chakra week. And
Yeah.
although I
Oh,
haven't
cool.
done a podcast about that, the crown chakra is all about our ability or inability to connect beyond ourselves to whatever we identify as spirit. And that can just be in my logo. I'm inside of an Enzo circle, seated in Sukhasana, fingers up, fingers down, intentionally, because you're right. We can't stay in our head and function. We have to pay our bills. We have to cross the street. We have to not trip. But in that same way, we have to bring ourselves from the ground in order to connect up. So there's imbalances. You're too rooted, too inflexible, agoraphobic, or you just want to party all the time like Eddie Murphy. It's a great song. I wanna party all the time.
Uh,
And so in that way, right, when you're working with clients, especially addiction comes to mind, we cannot stay in that space. That's avoidance of any kind. And I would submit to a lot of the people we know in this space spiritually bypass living their life. Everything's going to be fine, la la la. And that's great to have that attitude, but correct, you cannot stay there either and live in reality because we do want to express our ability to be positive, but we need to understand there's a lot of shit going on. And we're allowed to be upset or angry or fearful and express those things. The key is not to get stuck there. So, because you're a coach, could you describe through your brand how you, again, use this idea of party with clients?
yeah. So one of the things that I use, it's a 7 stage method. It's called the party within.
We
And
connect on the chakras with the
of
7.
yes, and, like, unbeknownst to me, this started to evolve before I was even deep into more of my, like, chakra and yoga journey, but what I attempt to guide people through is not to a particular definition of, like, this is what party means to you, but through questions. How do you redefine through these 7 stages? The first stage is detoxifying positivity, which is about removing the things that you might think this is where positivity needs to come from, or this is where I'm reaching for it. So this can be everything from social media algorithms to the food or substances that we're imbibing to the types of people or where we get validation and reinforced about what positivity is. So the small talk that you have with your friends who are maybe just reinforcing this very shallow idea of positivity for you. What does it mean to step back from that and start to detoxify some of the ways that positivity might be keeping you stuck in?
The word enabling's coming to mind.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
So we surround ourselves with the people who are going to make us feel good and or won't challenge us because
yes,
that's easy. And then we know as practitioners, you can't grow from that space.
yes. Yeah, and this has been probably one of the more painful parts of my process and journey is I feel very comfortable and happy and validated. I feel like the party scene and being around music and raves and festivals and being in that space to me it's what I love more than anything in the world, and I do believe that I have learned and it's been an arena for me to grow and change. But the great journey of my own over the last 5 to 7 years that I've been on has been one of meditation and quietness and groundedness and being able to be with others in an environment that is not that type of environment. That has been a beautiful challenge for me. And so that's why when I talk about this process, although it's a little frustrating, the process is meant to be one of self-definition for my clients and people that are going through it, of that it can be approached from both sides. I have people that are very introverted, maybe scared of those types of environments. And then I also have a lot of people who are maybe a lot more comfortable in those party environments, but both can receive something by going through this process.
Okay. So that's fascinating. There's a lot to unpack there. You mentioned identity. How we identify ourselves is often how the group with whom we hang sees us. And then we change. Maybe you were surrounding yourself with a bunch of people who did substances. And then, of course, you made the change not to. So, right there, you're changing your friend group, most likely, and how they view you. "Well, Evan, the party guy, oh, he's high all the time or whatever. How is he going to ever have any fun if he's not drunk? Whatever that is." And so that puts us in fear. And that happens with a lot of people. I'm not an addiction specialist by any means. And please, anyone out there dealing with any substance issue, please go seek professional treatment. And people like us can help you energetically, certainly as a 1-2 punch. But the way we identify ourselves is so important to uncrack. I do a whole meditation with my clients. I call it the mirror meditation. And if you just sit in front of a mirror and imagine all the labels that not only people call you, that you call yourself, human, son, brother, whatever that is. And when all that's stripped away, we are divine beings having this human experience. And so when we strip away that identity, we really do get to the raw, yummy nugget of who we are meant to be and then build back up from there. And
Yes.
so for your personal journey, I'd love you to take us through how much you'd like to share. I don't need to know your rock bottom unless that's part of your journey, but when you made the intentional switch from that guy to this guy, and was that when this program became downloaded, or had you been considering it prior to this switch? I'd like to know that.
Yeah. So the stage two of this party within process is actually called make peace with ghosts. And it's similar to this mirror, but I have clients and myself envision and kind of characterize these versions of ourselves and kind of see them almost as like the Harry Potter ghosts that are up in the thing. There are these characters that have full lives and maybe made some mistakes and others, but these characters that are, yes, a part of us and perhaps will never cease to be a part of us. Although we can, as we grow and expand and move in different energies, that we can make peace with those elements. And I will say my journey has been one of being able to make peace with some of these parts of my identities and not as some other like modalities and practitioners would be to like bury or kill or make that part wrong. To make peace and integrate those for me has led to a fuller lifestyle. But I resisted that for a long time. And particularly for me, I would try to do sobriety on my own, and I didn't have much of a spiritual practice for a while. I did seek the help of 12-step programs, and I do not consider myself fully sober today. However, really so much value, and I've learned so much. I'm in different 12-step programs now. I've learned so like there's other parts and ghosts and things that I'm always evolving and changing and integrating. But for me, the ability to kind of build and change and integrate without making the past version of myself completely wrong has been important.
Okay. Any practice from the yoga side of things and just energetic side of things, when we're releasing whatever we're releasing, we're meant to do it with gratitude. So even the scariest ghosts hanging out in your rafters, you want to acknowledge their place in your life. Without those characters or entities, you wouldn't be who you are sitting in front of me now. So that's all a gift, that awareness. So, when did yoga and that practice come into your life in terms of this journey as well? Because I wanted to ask you what sort of additional layer, if any, did that provide for you?
Yeah. I want to start with I do have some memories early on in my early 20s. I moved to New York and those were kind of my heaviest drinking days. And my mom was very sick and she passed away. And I had dealing with friends with overdoses. And there was just like a lot of grief around me at that time.
I'm sorry.
And I remember I started going to this little gym on the Lower East Side, and in the basement, there was a Friday night yoga class that a Russian woman was teaching. And I convinced some bros to go down there. And I remember us trying to do headstand, the very masculine way that you first approach yoga. And I remember even coming after a happy hour, coming to one of those classes drunk. And I remember just with the grace and humor with which this teacher met us and also set some boundaries for us and created ways for us to connect with it. So I just want to speak to like gratitude for somebody met me in that chaotic point in my life. And yoga wasn't really part of my life for a while until I moved to Los Angeles. And I remember wanting sort of some different things for New Year's one year. And there was a yoga studio by us that had a New Year's Eve evening. And it was like doing meditation and yoga there and just feeling like this euphoria. We did some rituals and letting go rituals on a New Year's Eve and waking up the
Mm.
next morning with this feeling that I'd never felt on a New Year's morning before, which is this true release of my spirit and the gratitude. And it just felt so different and lovely. From there, through my own journey, I was starting to integrate more health and wellness. And a studio that I was going to during COVID asked me to become a teacher. And I went down the journey there. But that was still all quite body oriented. And it's been the last like 4 or 5 years since I've now moved back to the Midwest. And again, I still feel so, so, so beginner in all of this, but I now see all the way back to those first, drunken headstands of something was guiding me to slowly start to integrate these things to today.
Okay. So, New York, LA, Midwest, just this evolution. Would you say where you are now has everything to do with because you had an addiction, or do you feel like you'd be here anyway?
I remember in high school, I was a overachiever, top of my class, president of everything, needed validation from everything. Actor, cello behind me. I'm a cellist. And I remember thinking, if I don't screw my life up, I'm not going to have anything to talk about. And I
Mm,
remember wanting an addiction because I wanted to go experience pain in the world. And whether that was the addiction already in my mind and head, which it probably was, I very clearly remember I even have a journal entry of like writing that and almost willing an addiction into my life because I feared I would be too boring. So my addiction has led to where I am today. And I will say my greatest fear for most of my life was that I didn't have purpose or that I wouldn't have purpose in the world.
mm.
And I feel completely opposite today. I feel serene and purposeful. And even in my most chaotic days, I'm really grateful because I've had great teachers and people that have supported me. But with my clients and what I've done in the world, I feel so proud and exactly like where I'm meant to be. And I get calls and DMs every day from people all around the world who are interacting with my very imperfect way of showing up. And they're making changes in their lives. And it's the best.
Yeah. I say in my classes, we're all perfectly imperfect because we are. Okay, so here's a good question for you because you mentioned DMs and you mentioned coming from a place of less than. So there was definitely a hole, even though you were this high achiever, whether you knew it or not, your body felt like you were kind of faking it, imposter syndrome, whatever. When you get those DMs telling you how you've impacted people or how amazing you are or whatever it is, has it matched? Or do you still get that initial hit of, "Me? Really?" You know? And how long did that take? Or was it right away? Like, "Yeah, I'm living my dharma. This is my purpose. I'm so glad people really see me and understand me, and that validates who you are without needing to fill a hole."
Yeah. Let me just check in on that for a second. I do feel when I get those DMs, I can receive those. I can receive that from a place of, yes, I'm grateful and I have this here. Now, sometimes I'll try to post a funny video or a thirst trap, or I'll post something where it's like I still have parts of me that are trying to get a little bit of that type of validation. And when I get the likes there, the likes roll in, right? It's like boom, instant. I get a whole bunch of the validation that I think I want. And then I'll go back and look at that and I'll get that little wave on the back of my neck. I'm like, ugh, all right, there's still part of you that gets to integrate some of this because you're still seeking to fill some of this with something else.
Well, I think that's natural, especially growing a business and trying to attract clients. We do throw a lot of noodles on the wall, and I would offer the personas with which we throw those noodles are still us. We are ridiculous and silly and funny or honest and raw. And so trying not to pigeonhole even ourselves from how we're going to post and what we're going to post. I just had this conversation the other day. I do my own podcast. I'm my own practitioner, and yet I've made a schedule, and then I freak out when I'm not sticking to the schedule. And then I have to really catch myself like, that's ridiculous. No one gives a shit except for you, and you're putting too much pressure on yourself. You're making a schedule no one even knows about, you know? So it's funny. And then the other part is too, you and I had this conversation prior to hopping on here, the way the algorithms change as coaches in this space, you and I, it's really important to remind ourselves as we remind our clients if we were basing our value on likes or hits or DMs, we wouldn't be very happy all of the time, especially in a world where we're not even in charge of the algorithm itself. And Geppetto's out there with the puppet master. We don't even know how many there are. And we're just all these little ping pong balls in this machine trying to hit the lottery with, oh, that's the post that's going to do it, or that's the statement that's going to do it. And then if it does, we're in fear if we don't keep that up. Where really it was just a good serendipitous win that day. So do you find yourself sort of getting stuck in that pattern a little bit, or not much based on what you just said? But that must be part of the work that you do too. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm always frustrated by having to feed the algorithm. And also, I've separated myself from that and being able to have this conversation, right? I've learned that whatever's happening on short form media right now, short form content, for whatever reason, my energetic body is just not aligned with creating that content very easily. And I can try to hire people and I can put stuff out there, but maybe that's not the way that I'm made to connect with people right now. And this feels so like this is my third podcast today. And it feels good and energetic and happy for me to do this. When I have to make one short form video a day, it can ruin my entire day for 30 seconds of content. And so I'm trying to take that as a signal of, hey, something is moving me in this direction. And then sometimes these turn into clips but oftentimes not. Just having this conversation lights me up with a different story that I can post, right? Or there's some other way that I get to show up because this is sustaining the way that I like to show up.
And it's your party for when you're doing it.
Well, and it's and
Right.
it's and it's your party, you stepping into this podcast and
Yeah.
having these
We're
conversations for you.
We're having a party. I
Yeah.
love that. Yeah, no, for real. And truthfully, you're listening to your body, which is what we're supposed to do. And when you get that little wave, like you said, on the back of your neck, or you just dread the post, you're allowed to not do that and find a way that feeds you in the higher vibe of joy, because that is one of the highest vibes. And just by being your authentic self with me and other podcasts, that's what people are going to resonate with. That's the vibe they're going to feel, and that's what our job is, right? That's the fun part, the party part, in my opinion, of the job, is to see somebody else lit up because of something we've said, or in your case, music you've played. Okay, so I know you started off in the festival space, you said, and now you're still in it, but it's all sober or sober adjacent. So people can show up who necessarily aren't, or is it only for people who are sober? Could you explain?
So it is not exclusively sober. In fact, I spent 3+ years doing events that were primarily sober and in that space. And I will say there was a lot of cool stuff and joy and energy there. Although in my experience, it was a type of boundary and a way of setting things up that I think it was trying to recreate something that didn't need to be recreated in that way. There was forced vibes about it. Like, say whatever you will, but I've done a lot of training to show up fully in that space. It was just difficult, and the people would show up for one or two, and then wouldn't want to continue to show up for those types of environments. And I'm sitting in a space right now. with a business partner helping open this space that's kind of a hybrid event space that is like no low alcohol. So we don't necessarily provide it, but some people, if they maybe wanted to bring a little bit on their own, they could. But it wasn't explicitly like a don't do it in this space, but creating an energy and vibe where that is not the primary element there, that seems to really have touched and been excited for people. So I'm always experimenting and growing. And I think a lot of people are working on what this looks like and feels like in the world. I don't have a ton of answers, but through this party within process, what I try to help people find is stages like 5 and 6 are about find your tribe and host your ceremony. So it's about finding what are those versions, those sustainable, repeatable versions of events and tribes and people that are aligned with where you're at right now in your life.
Okay. So let's do this if you want to. Do you want to go through your 7 stages? Because we've danced around them, not necessarily in order. And I feel like that would be impactful for people to understand.
Sure.
And what's it called? Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the best way to do this, I'll give a little intro. I'm going to go through all 7 steps and kind of read just like briefly what they are, and then I'll have a question or 2 for you, and maybe we can dive into each one. So the party within this method is like a 7-stage framework for people who want to move from a kind of a dependent social life into a more like creative social life, right? So you might depend on validation or depend on substances or things like this to moving to one that's more self-generated. So rebuilding your social life from the inside out. So here's the 7 stages. Number 1, detoxify positivity. This is about resetting your dopamine and reclaiming your attention. Number 2, make peace with ghosts. Let go of past identities, toxic nostalgia, dead friendships, etc. Number 3, spark the party within. This is the embodiment one, finding your flow, building habits that are going to sustain you, not deplete you. Number 4, drop the armor. This is about those identities and stories and those that armor that we wear when we go into social situations. How do we drop that, building authentic confidence without faking it? Number 5, find your tribe, how to start to curate connection and protect your energy around that tribe. Number 6, host your ceremony. This is how to build a sustainable, recreatable, maybe monthly or weekly ceremony that you're hosting that you can be inviting people to. And how is that going to sustain? And then number 7, party for life. This is about what happens when that ceremony burns out. What happens when things don't work anymore? When it's exhausted. And how do you ask for help and realizing that while the party is within, you don't always have to be starting that party, that asking for help and finding other people along the journey is going to be really important for sustaining your social life going. So my question for you is, yeah, out of all of those, is there any one of those for you where you feel like, ooh, I'd like to know a little bit more about that, or I'd like a little bit more of that in my life right now?
Gosh. Well, while you were going through the list, I was smiling bigger and bigger because it's all connecting with the lens that I use, which is the chakras. And I'm like,
Right?
this makes so much sense to me. And when people walk through your door, and you start down these steps, my wheel starts spinning. It's like, well, that might be hard for some people if got a block in this area or that area, that area. In my life, people who know me know I will dance at the drop of a hat. I'll get on a table, I'll sing, I'll rage it out, and I don't have to be on any sort of substance. I can do it first thing in the morning, throughout the day, put music on, and I'll just go. And so that's there. I guess when you're going through it, because you touched on something. So you're building party from the inside. And one of the things that you said was create your own ceremony. So you create your own ceremony, you gather the people, you're organizing the party. But then when you get to the 7th step, what happens when the noise dies down or there is no party? And then you're asking for help. So is the practice, and this isn't necessarily about me, but is the practice like first learning how to be brave enough to make a party, like an actual like gathering, whatever that is, whether it's dinner, doesn't have to be about music, correct? It can just be anything, a discussion, whatever.
Yes, but like book clubs is one of the more popular ones that people that I
Okay.
know do this. Yeah.
And then people will either show up or they won't. So that triggers something else. And then when you get to the 7th step, what does that look like? Because now you've been doing the work, right? and now you're supposed to just sort of wait to be invited because you and I talked about our human design before we got on this too. And that's hard for me, but I'm supposed to wait to be invited. So if you could just sort of tell me between those two what that looks like or means, maybe I could answer the question a little better.
Yeah. Well, I think this is great for someone that might have that internal confidence and courage that you already have. Like put me in and I can dance and change. But perhaps the courage for us, and this is similar, is you can drop me in the middle of anywhere and I will create the fun. I'll create whatever. But to ask, to be quiet or to wait to be asked to join a party or to do the quiet work on my own or to be in that slower sustainable rest period before I start the next party, that takes a different type of courage for me. So I think the word courage is one that comes up a lot in this party within process. And why I talked about at the beginning is sometimes the courage is going to look like being an extrovert, and sometimes the courage is going to look like being more introverted for people.
Mhm.
And so for me, the courage of building a way that I show up for the world, that I do get invited, or that somebody wants to take over my ceremony or the party from me, learning the patience and having the patience to not try to fix and change it right away, that's been the struggle for me.
Okay. I can connect with that. And it goes back to what you touched on in terms of identity. So I just described myself, just like you said, drop me anywhere, I can make a party. And I always ask to know. But showing up authentically is the key. So if I'm showing up in a Tigger, I call my son Tigger. He and I are very wired the same. If there's music and I want to be jumping around, and it's not a fucking funeral, but if there's a place to sort of move my body or get a little uppity, I'm going to do it. I also know how to read the room. So I wasn't necessarily raised in a family that taught me that. I had to learn how to read a room because not everybody wants or needs me or that type of me to show up and be all out there. But at the same way, if I want to show up and be all out there and somebody else is having a problem with it, from your work, that's all about them and their triggers. Now, I don't want to be an asshole and just be in all their face, obvious that they're not having a good time. So I'll back off. But the initial way we step into a room, read the room, read your own energy. And if I'm showing up to an actual party and I don't feel like dancing, that's when I get those looks like, what's wrong with you? Are you okay? And the courage, like you said, is to just say, yeah, just hanging out, just hanging out. And what people don't realize about me is although I'm like out there and doing all these things, I really like to be alone. And that was a surprise, right? And it's kind of snuck up on me as not even as my kids started leaving the house. I really liked it when they left for school, not only because I got my own stuff done, but I needed that space. I needed the recharge. I just made a post about this connecting to the crown chakra today, using my mom as a lens because she and I are also wired similarly. We called her the Energizer Bunny. She didn't have the practices that you and I have or the language. And so what would happen is she'd burn out. She'd like get sick or get exhausted. And her phrase was, my get up and go, got up and went. So the way you just described, like recharging your battery, learning that you need to, giving yourself permission to, even if there's a party going on all around you, stepping into the bathroom, going out to the parking lot, taking deep breaths, just really checking in with yourself. You don't have to be on all the time, especially when we're growing these businesses. I think that's a really hard thing to remember too. You don't have to be posting. You don't have to be so visible. The right people are going to come to you because you've invited them into your space because you've posted 3 days ago, right? So we don't have to be the woodpeckers all the time. Knock, knock, knock. I'm here. I'm here. I'm here. But we forget that, I think.
Yeah. What was your mom's name?
Carol.
Carol?
Yeah.
So we didn't talk about this, right? Because my literal nickname was Energizer Bunny. That's
Oh,
what my
really?
friends that's what, like, people call me, and then my Burning Man name was Springs because I was always on Springs,
Like
and
Tigger.
like Tigger. So
I love that. Wow.
so I think there's definitely some energy
Yeah.
here. And also as developing these tools, as I mentioned, has been really painful and hard to slow down. And I feel like not myself still sometimes when I'm doing an extra 15 minutes in the sauna without my phone and I'm just sitting there. And I was like, I could be doing something right now. It's like you are being. When I do that, I'm able to show up with 15% more authentic energy for something like this instead of that overcompensating energy that I now realize I had taken on so much as a part of who I was.
Yeah, and that's the fun part of what we do is helping people first discover how they're wired. It's the way I look at it. And then help them understand how to rewire those instructions for the bodies that they're living with now in any role they play. So I say when you understand how your wheels turn, you can drive the vehicle of your body anywhere. And you would say, I would imagine, wherever you're driving your vehicle, you want to have that party come from the inside, right? So wherever your destination is, you're there in that version, correct? I don't want to put
Correct.
words in your mouth. Okay. Yeah. So I love there's so many connections, which is no accident. And where we are energetically, I can speak for myself, having this kind of conversation no longer, thankfully, puts me in any sort of fear or competition or jealousy that you're doing what you're doing that's sort of crossing over into my space. That's the expansion. So we're no longer gatekeeping and keeping others down to rise. We are saying, no, let's go together. You do your thing, I'm doing my thing, so are they. And together we all rise because we're just two noodles. Somebody's going to like our flavor or somebody's going to like somebody else's flavor, but we're still noodles and we're still going to do it, and the right people are gonna wanna eat at our restaurant, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
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 And that there are such different flavors and there's so many just infinite possibilities and archetypes that there's people that really at whatever stage in life they are, they really need to receive this information from you. And there's some people that need to receive it from me. Realizing that I cannot be for everyone all the time. This is really difficult for me too, because that's what I want. I want
Yeah.
every single person to see and need me because they see how terminally unique that I am.
Yeah. Well, and you are. And now it's time for joy on the fives. So, Evan, I have a break in my show where I ask my guests right now in this moment, besides this conversation, what is bringing you joy?
That was bringing me joy. I just started tennis lessons a couple weeks ago, and I did 2 privates, which were difficult, and I'm a pretty beginner. I played a little bit in high school, but that's been fun, but now I am on a group lesson team, and it's 6 women and me. But we had our first lesson yesterday morning, and it was so fun, and I was energized through the whole day of just being in my body and being a little competitive, but being a beginner at something where I'm 39 years old and I've kind of done a lot of things. It just feels good to be a beginner at something again.
That's beautiful. You're my first guest who's ever said tennis. And I come from tennis. My husband played tennis. I'm playing pickle now, but it's super fun to move your body in that way. And I love what you said that you're letting and allowing yourself to be a beginner. And that's such a practice also for high achievers who can do a lot. And I feel like we're built kinesthetically that way too. I learn by doing, enjoy doing, but I always like to do things well when I do them. So learning something is hard and then getting better at it is fun, right?
Yes.
But then giving ourselves grace to make mistakes is important. All right. So, what else would you like to include in this conversation before we end our time? I'm going to put all of your stuff in the show notes, but is there any sort of event coming up for you, or did we not touch on something that you were hoping that we would? So, the stage is yours.
I just ask for anyone who's listening to this in the present or in the future that you find a way to let the party within you out and not get too caught up in the narratives of social media is doing this or the government is doing this or like there's so many narratives that you can blame for why you're not having fun or partying. And my invitation is just for today, let that go, call up a friend and go on a walk. Like go find a stranger at a coffee shop or a bookstore and ask them what they're reading. Like that to me is the simple action that I ask people to start with. And if you just start to do that a little bit day after day, like this party within you is going to start to naturally come. You don't need my process. You don't need anything else. Like that party is within you, but you have to let go of the narratives that the world is against you or that it's blocking you from things because it will always win out over the party with you.
I love that. I just love how you're reframing the idea of party, which is going to be a hard nut to crack for some people. But just striking up a conversation with a stranger at a coffee shop is the very definition, in my opinion, of how you're describing party. You are taking part in
Yes.
and engaging with and imparting yourself with someone else. So the connection is the party. And the connection to yourself is the way you invite that first guest. And then once you understand that you are your own party, you're whole no matter what, then you can invite others more authentically and successfully to join you. I love that. So thank you so much for finding me and joining me on the Real and the Woo party today.
Love it. I love the
And
woo. I love the real.
yeah, thank you so, so much. It's such a pleasure to get to know you a little better. And I wish you so much success and can't wait to see how our roads intersect in the future. And again, everything about Evan will be in my show notes below. And you guys out there, go have a party.
Party
Thank
on.
you.